Hello there, my name is Johnnie Rhodes, and I will be your narrator for today's tale, Something Has Been Killing My Sheep, written by our very own Madison Loviathyn Maneros, exclusively for the Horror Hour, also starring Smalls as Crystal. We hope you enjoy. I've been a farmer for nearly 10 years now, and I've seen and heard a lot of strange things, but nothing could have prepared me for this. It started a month ago. I was out doing my morning rounds, checking on my sheep, and found one of them dead. Its body was mangled and twisted in a horrible manner. The smell was even worse. Yeah, my breakfast came right back up. I'd never seen something so gruesome. The injuries didn't resemble anything I'd seen before. Then it happened again. And again. By the end of the second week, I'd lost 10 sheep. Crystal seemed to come from the farm next to mine, though I hadn't seen her before. I'd found her one morning at the fence separating our land, staring at the corpse of yet another one of my sheep. Make that 11. She explained that she thought it was only happening to her. I was relieved. But the relief turned into fear. Because what the hell kind of thing was doing this? She ended up coming over for dinner more than a few times. I suppose we found comfort in one another, and the fact that we were both losing livestock to something. And the fact that I didn't know what it was or couldn't find any evidence was driving me crazy. I learned that she was Old Man Rick's daughter, staying for the summer. I didn't even know the old man had a daughter. His wife had left him years ago. It had been quite the talk of the town. But we grew closer, bonded by the shared mystery and the long, tense nights watching over our farms. Crystal had a quiet strength about her, a resilience that made me feel less alone in my growing paranoia. We spent hours discussing theories about what could be happening, but each idea seemed more far-fetched than the last. Coyotes, wild dogs, even a rogue bear. But none of these explanations fit the eerie, almost methodical way our animals were being hunted. One evening, after another unsuccessful search for clues, Crystal and I sat on my porch, sipping coffee and staring into the darkness.
Alex, whatever it is, it has to be something wild and vicious.
She said, her voice barely a whisper.
I read about cases where predators get smarter over time, learning how to avoid leaving evidence. Could it be something like that?
Her words lingered with me, leaving me deeply unsettled and unsure. I found myself more determined to stop this thing, especially if it meant she could rest. So, every night, I stayed up later. The weight of the rifle, a constant reminder of the threat lurking in the shadows. I decided to place bear traps around the property, hoping to catch whatever was preying on our livestock. I spent an entire day setting them up, each trap well hidden. Then, it finally happened. I was sitting in my mom's old rocking chair on the porch, hoping the gentle motion would help keep me awake. But it was having the opposite effect. The long nights were getting to me. My rifle rested on my lap, and despite my best efforts, I had nodded off. A screech pierced through the night, jerking me awake and sending a jolt of fear through my body. I don't know how long I'd been asleep for. I sat frozen, fear paralyzing me for a moment. When I looked out into the field, I saw something large thrashing in one of our bear traps. My initial relief at it being an animal was short-lived. Whatever was out there was enormous. In my startled state, I had dropped my rifle. I quickly turned to pick it up, my hands trembling. The creature's pained screeches filled the night, and by the time I turned back around, gun drawn and heart pounding, it had vanished. I picked myself up quickly and let Annie, my dog, out of the house. She seemed just as scared as I was, and it took more than a few tries to coax her out. We were going to get this thing. Slowly, we made our way over to the trap, Annie scouting ahead, sniffing the air. Her confident advances told me the creature was gone. When we reached the trap, I inspected it closely. A chunk of flesh was caught in the metal jaws. The damn thing had torn itself free. The bear trap should have crushed bone, yet here it was. Whatever it was strong. Stronger than anything should be. I noticed a blood trail heading into the forest. With my gun drawn, I began to follow it. but I stopped myself at the tree line. Crystal, would she want to come with me? Should I let her come with me? She was a capable woman, sure, but if she got hurt, I wouldn't forgive myself. But what if I got hurt alone? Torn by decision, I turned and raced toward the neighboring farmhouse. I jumped our connecting fences and stumbled as I sprinted toward Old Man Rick's house. The lights were on, luckily, casting a warm glow over the yard. I reached the door and began knocking violently. Annie had caught up to me and was eagerly sniffing under the door. I called for Crystal several times, along with Old Man Rick, but got no answer. I was growing impatient, and I tried the doorknob. To my surprise, it was open. "Crystal! Rick! It's me!" I called out, stepping inside cautiously. Annie darted in ahead of me, disappearing into the house. I followed after her, my heart pounding in my chest. The kitchen was empty, no signs of a meal being prepared. "Crystal?" I called again, my voice echoing through the silent house. I turned the corner to face the living room and almost fell to my knees. It felt like all these twisted, mutilated sheep corpses had been preparing me for this. Old Man Rick's body lay torn and twisted on the ground, his dry blood staining the carpet. His chest had a gaping wound, and it looked like nothing remained inside him. His organs and bones were gone. I gagged, bile rushing in my throat. Annie was giving him a close inspection, and I called her away from him between gags. The smell was horrible, a putrid stench. Something had fed on him, but it must have been a few days ago, given the state of his body. "Crystal, where was she?" "Crystal?" I called out, my voice trembling with fear. Had that thing in a trap done this? Had it taken her? Questions frantically flicked through my mind. I searched the house, every room and closet, but there was no sign of her. I couldn't let panic take over. I braced myself, grabbing a lantern from the kitchen and checking my rifle one more time. Annie stayed close, her ears perked and eyes alert. Back outside, the blood trail leading into the forest seemed more ominous now, knowing what the creature was capable of. I couldn't wait any longer. I had to find Crystal and put an end to this nightmare. I started into the forest, moving swiftly but cautiously, my rifle at the ready. Annie scouted ahead, her nose working overtime to track any scent. It's like she knew what had to be done. The trees loomed around us, their branches like skeletal fingers reaching out to ensnare us. We moved deeper into the woods, the blood trail eventually thinning, becoming harder to see. I was acutely aware of the lack of noise, the silence of the forest pressing in on me. Every twig I stepped on made me cringe. If it was here, it knew I was coming. Then, a small clearing appeared ahead. In the center, the creature lay, writhing in pain. I could see it better now. It was skeletal, with long, extended limbs and massive paws, blood dripping from its dog-like jaws. Its ribcage protruded from its form, and antlers crowned its head. This was no bear nor wolf. What was it? The creature groaned in pain, its voice shifting into a woman-like cry before morphing back into an unearthly growl. I raised my rifle, my hands trembling. Annie growled beside me, her back arched and body tense. As I moved closer, the creature's eyes locked onto mine, glowing red, filled with a mixture of rage and despair. The human-like voice emerged again, clearer this time.
"Help me."
It pleaded, a chilling echo of Crystal's voice. "Crystal?" I whispered, my heart pounding.
"Yes?"
The creature's form shuddered, its grotesque limbs twitching. It was playing tricks with me. Could it mimic her voice? "What are you? Where is Crystal?" I demanded, my voice trembling. The creature's eyes flickered with a hint of recognition. It replied,
"I am Crystal."
its voice hollow and distorted. I ignored it. "What are you?" I demanded, my voice shaking with a mix of fear and anger.
"Does it matter? You're here to kill me."
She hissed. The weight of her words hit me hard. Was this Crystal? Really? My grip on the rifle tightened as I tried to process the revelation.
"You're pointing that thing at me. Do it then."
She hissed again, anger now threaded in her tone. What happened to you? Tell me something Crystal would only know.
You never let me sit in your mother's rocking chair.
The breath caught in my throat. It was true. Only Crystal would know that. The weight of the rifle seemed to double in my hands. What happened to you? I repeated, my voice barely a whisper.
I was hungry, starving. Rick found me, tried to help, but the hunger, it's insatiable. It twisted me into this.
Crystal's monstrous form shuddered. The truth stung, deepening the betrayal. So, all of it was a lie? Your whole story?
Not all of it.
She said, tears streaming down her twisted face.
I didn't choose this. I wanted to believe I could live a normal life. But the Wendigo's curse is too powerful. I tried to fight it to keep you and everyone else safe, but I failed.
The moonlight cast an eerie glow over the clearing, highlighting the monstrous reality of what she had become. You should have told me, I said, my voice breaking. I could have helped you.
I know.
She replied, her voice filled with regret.
I was afraid. Afraid of what I might do. Afraid of what you would do if you knew the truth.
I took a step towards her, reaching out for her, but she snapped at me, nearly taking off my hand. I hardly moved away in time.
Stay back!
She cried, baring her teeth at me. You're out of control, I replied, my voice trembling with a mixture of fear and desperation. Crystal's monstrous form shuddered, her eyes wild with the struggle against her own nature.
I can't help it,
she pleaded, the Wendigo's hunger twisting her features into a grotesque mask.
It's too strong. I don't want to hurt you.
I took a cautious step forward, my heart pounding in my chest. You have to fight it, Crystal. You have to try. She backed away, her claws scraping against the forest floor.
I've tried,
she cried, her voice a tortured wail.
But it's like a fire burning inside of me, consuming everything in its path.
I could see the struggle in her eyes, the battle between her humanity and the insatiable hunger of the Wendigo. You have to fight, I urged, my voice filled with a desperate hope. You can't let it win! For a moment, it seemed like she might relent, like the human part of her was winning out. But then, with a guttural roar, she lunged forward, her claws slashing through the air. I stumbled back, barely avoiding her deadly swipe. Crystal, stop! I cried, raising the rifle in a futile attempt to defend myself. She smacked the rifle away from me, leaving me defenseless. I was an idiot, and I knew I was going to die for it. But then, Annie was on her, biting into her leg. Crystal cried out in pain, flinging Annie off her with a desperate swipe. It gave me just enough time to scramble for my rifle and take aim. Crystal staggered to her feet, her monstrous form looming over me.
Please,
she muttered, her voice barely audible beneath the growls. I hesitated, the weight of the decision heavy on my shoulders. I had put down many animals in my lifetime, sick ones, injured ones, even the occasional predator that threatened my livelihood. No one wants to admit it, but it's hard. It's not just the act itself, but the weight of responsibility that comes with it. It's the look in their eyes, the pleading, the fear, as if they know what's coming, as if they understand that I hold their fate in my hands. But Crystal wasn't just another animal. She was a monster, and monsters needed to be stopped. I pulled the trigger. The shot rang out, shattering the silence of the forest. Crystal fell back, her monstrous form convulsing in pain before finally falling still. I stood there for a moment, the echoes of the gunshots still ringing in my ears. The weight of what I had done settled over me like a heavy blanket, suffocating and inescapable. But as I looked down at Crystal's lifeless form, I knew that I had done what needed to be done. She may have once been human, but now she was something else entirely, a danger to herself and everyone around her. With a heavy heart and a silent prayer for forgiveness, I turned away from the clearing and made my way back to the farmhouse, Annie in my arms. She was alive, thankfully, and I owed her my life. The nightmare was over, but the memory of Crystal's final moments would haunt me forever. And as I looked up at all the stars twinkling in the night sky, I knew that I would never forget the price of mercy in a world filled with monsters. Thanks for listening. If you would like to hear more tales of horror, don't forget to follow the Horror Hour podcast on Spotify and YouTube. Be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for all the latest stories. Until next time, see you around.